All right. It is exactly 1 o'clock on Monday in November, which means that it's time for Ohio's Career Readiness Leaders Network meetup. So thanks to everyone that's able to join us. We're continuing to build on our series of empowering students to be engaged in developing their professional skills and really equipping teachers with skills to engage students remotely. So if you remember back in September, we had a special guest, Eric Schiniger, who shared with us some principles on ensuring that students are staying engaged in remote learning. And then our own Amy Harker kind of built on that in October to share with us a few ways to engage students through remote technology type platforms in career readiness objectives, where we started to begin the conversation around online tools that would help further that type of career readiness work. So today we're going to build on that conversation. In our session today is entitled Working with Students on Developing Their Skills to Get and Keep a Job. So we're fortunate that we have a special guest with us here today, and we'll let him introduce himself here in just a minute. This presentation can be found on the department's webpage. I put a link in the chat, and I might ask some of my other department colleagues to continue to paste that link out there as we have folks joining us, because if they've joined, they will not have seen historical chat. So if we can just keep chatting that link out, that would be great. But you can download this presentation there, and you'll also find a copy of our feedback survey on the webpage as well. So first, just some basic reminders. We're all pretty used to meeting virtually at this point, so these are probably just repetitive, but make sure that we're muting our microphones as other people are speaking. Unless you're about to speak, then please keep your microphone muted. We really want to encourage talking with one another, so please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions. If you're looking to direct a question at a particular person that's maybe on the call, you can use the @ sign to start tagging people in your chats. So for example, if you had a question for Amy, you could hit @Amy Harker, and that will kind of direct the message to her. So please use the chat box to ask any questions. We'd love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat box. So your name, your role in the district that would you serve, or the organization that you serve in. So please introduce yourself in the chat at this time. We also would love to see all of your faces. At this point, I really hate talking to a blank computer screen, so it would make me really happy if I could see your faces instead of just the computer screen. So we'd love to have you turn your video on if that's possible for you. We also then have a feedback survey to round out our presentation today. We want to make sure that we're providing the information that you need to feel successful and supported in your roles right now, especially during these uncertain times. So please give us some feedback. That'd be great. So for today, we kind of got through, we're going to go through some introductions, talk with you a little bit more about the planning team, and then introduce you to our special guest for today. And we're going to briefly talk about using the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal as a foundation for helping students prepare to get and keep a job in high school and beyond. Then we're going to kind of move into online tools for teaching those professional skills, move into online and in-person type of interviewing practice tips and tools. And then we want to make sure that you're connected to our next meetup date, which will be December 14th at 1 o'clock. So with that, we're going to kind of move right into our introductions. So if your name's on the screen, let's go in order of your name in the screen. Just turn your camera on, unmute, and introduce yourself. So Amy, you want to go first?
Unmuted. There we go. I am Amy Harker. I am the Northeast Regional Career and Innovation Specialist for the ESC of Northeast Ohio, and I'm very happy to be here today and I look forward to this presentation.
And I'm Cassie Palsgrove. I'm a former classroom educator. I'm a program administrator at the Department of Education. I work in our Career Connections and Success Bound unit, which leads a lot of our college and career readiness initiatives at the agency. Kayla?
Hi, and I'm Kayla Mack. I'm an education consultant in the Office of Career Connections.
Hi, I'm Michelle Washington. I'm an education program specialist in the Office of Career Connections.
And we're sure that he's going to give us a bit more information about him. But Yusuf, you want to go ahead and give a wave and say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to introduce myself now. Does that work? I am a senior clinical talent acquisition partner. I essentially operate as a recruiter as well as a partner for our acquisition efforts, right? So working with Nationwide Children's, I've been there for about 3.5 years, and I'm really excited to join today's conversation.
Well, we really appreciate your time and expertise in doing that as well. So we're anxious to hear what recruiters are looking for and some tips that our fellow career readiness leaders here might be able to pass on to their students. So thanks again for joining us. With that, again, we want to use the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal 15 professional skills as kind of like our foundation for how we're working with leaders in teaching students employment skills or professional skills. They're also known as soft skills or 21st century skills. So everybody's got their own flavor of what they like to call them. We like to call them professional skills. So if you break down the Readiness Seal, and hopefully all of you are more than familiar with the process of the seal, but basically students need to demonstrate proficiency in 14 skills and then sign a drug-free pledge, which rounds out our 15. To give you a brief history of how those were selected, Ohio's business community was surveyed in order to kind of capture the breadth of what type of skills employers were looking for. We paired that information with some national research from NACE, which is the national organization that works with colleges and employers. So both of those types of skills really led us to the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal, which is rooted in those NACE 15 professional skills. What we find and what we hear from employers often, which I'm sure you're also hearing these things, is we need students who have interpersonal skills, who can write, who can show up on time, who are drug-free, and who can be professional and work in a team. And so those skills transcend career fields. So we're going to focus on that here in this session today, knowing that that is kind of the base level of knowledge and skill that needs to be, in our students for them to be employable in high school and beyond. The great news is those 15 professional skills, teaching that foundational content or introducing students to those foundational skills really can be embedded in any course. If you are offering career technical education pathways, you know that they're embedded into every career technical course, but even academic courses. So oral and written communication happens in every single classroom. So these types of skills can really be embedded in any course. One other thing that our team is going to begin some project work on is looking how those 15 professional skills and the social emotional learning competencies fit hand in hand as well. So if your school district is really focusing on social emotional learning at this time, these 15 professional skills really align well with especially those 9th through 12th grade level social emotional learning competencies. So think of these 15 skills as kind of the foundation skills to teach our students on how to get and keep a job. Any other thoughts, comments, questions on this from my team before we move on? Okay. So we want to kind of introduce you to or reintroduce you to some tools to help teach those professional skills. So we all know that, things like learning agility might mean one thing to one person and something else to other people. So there is definitely this need for kind of some level setting across districts with all students, even with all of our teachers, on what exactly we're talking about when we are focusing in on the proficiency of each one of those professional skills. So we want to kind of introduce you to 3 separate learning tools today on how you might lay that foundational understanding of each of those skills. I want to emphasize that teaching students the skills and having them, either respond to prompts or tell you in your own words, their own words, what those skills mean is really only step 1 in this process. The goal of the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal is that students are consistently demonstrating with multiple mentors an appropriate level of skill in each of these skills. It's not necessarily just, my students have gone through the curriculum to learn about these skills. The emphasis is placed on students demonstrating proficiency in these skills so that we know that they're going to be successful when their mentors maybe can't be as hands-on. And so one of the foundational tools that we introduce and is kind of resonated throughout each of these tools we're going to introduce you today is that Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal competency rubric. And if you've never seen the rubric, I encourage you to check it out because it really does allow for some scaffolding to happen when students are having conversations with their mentors about their performance in a certain skill. So each level of demonstration really does build on each other. And we can talk more about that with you one-on-one if using the rubric is something that you'd like a little more conversation with our team about. So the first online tool that we want to introduce you to, and Kayla's going to show you this tool, is called the LRNG. It is an online web-based platform, and there's a badging system that's attached to that. So the LRNG, Kayla's going to introduce you to and ask for some help. The next one is we've built on the Padlet that we introduced you to. And if you were unable to join our session where we introduced the Padlet to you, we're going to do kind of a high-level overview of what's all contained on there. The Padlet does offer some asynchronous ways that you can help students understand and demonstrate these 15 professional skills. And then lastly, Brenna's going to show you a curriculum that was developed with Ohio State in conjunction with a lot of other stakeholders called Envision It. And that curriculum is rooted in demonstrating these professional skills after students have been introduced to the content. So with that, we're going to kind of walk you through each of these tools. And then we're going to welcome Yusuf to kind of talk about how these skills are used in employment, but then also some tips on how to catch a recruiter's eye and perhaps interview in a remote setting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kayla to talk a little bit about the LRNG. And Kayla, if you need me to click anything, don't hesitate to just tell me.
Yep. So the LRNG, just a little background about it. It was purchased out by the Southern New Hampshire University in about 2018. And they merged with the current foundational LRNG to build it is what I consider the kids' LinkedIn learning. It does a really good job of bringing together all of that content from industry, targeting those workforce solutions from a city's perspective, or it could be very unique to an employer. It is, again, it's a national platform that is free for students to use. And it's focused on closing that equity gap by transforming how young kids or people access and experience learning and the paths they take to success. And the Career Connections team is currently looking to work with the LRNG in publishing an online playlist of activities for students to engage in to build their academic knowledge and understanding of each of the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness professional skills and how they are applied to the world of work. So that's, and then in the shared presentation, you'll see this is a live link so that you can explore and learn more about the LRNG. So Cassie, that's all that I had for that one.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's move to the Padlet.
And Padlet is designed as an interactive tool, and I'll go ahead and share the Padlet that we have prepared. I think those of you that might have joined us in the past might be familiar. We had started building it out, and we've actually listed some activities to help you to teach these skills, along with some videos and activities to go over each professional skill that's listed on the Ohio Means Job Readiness Seal. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat for you to explore, and feel free to use this as you're teaching students readiness skills. And I've put that in the chat currently for you to access. Cassie, you may be on mute.
Nope, I thought you were going to share your screen and share it. I must have missed it.
Sure, I can certainly go ahead and do that. Just one moment. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. Sorry, I have tons. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. You can follow along with the link that's listed in the chat. And it's just taking a moment for my screen share to load. But if you have accessed that already, we have actually loaded all of the professional skills on the Padlet my screen is still loading, but it goes from all of the readiness skills that's listed on the Ohio Means Job Readiness Seal, from reliability, work ethics, professionalism, discipline. But the great thing about this tool is that we've already built it out. However, you can certainly feel free to edit it as, or use it as a template to help students become acclimated. And I'm sorry, my screen is still taking some time to load. So certainly utilize that link that's accessible in the chat.
Yep, that's okay. I think I have it pulled up. Michelle, do you want me to share?
Yes, can you please?
Yep, absolutely. So each of the 15 skills has 3 activities associated with it. One around defining the particular skill, one around practicing the particular skill, and one around performing or evaluating the particular skill. So each of the 15 professional skills has those 3 types of activities. And for those of you that might be not familiar with Padlet, one of the great features about it is that you can hit remake here and copy it into your own account, which accounts are free for up to 3 Padlets. So if this is something that works for you and you like this type of tool, you can just remake it and change the activities to meet your needs as well. Anything else you want to add to that, Michelle?
No, this is a great accessible tool. It's something that you can utilize in a classroom. You can actually make it interactive and have students actually add to this. So it's a great resource.
Awesome. Okay.
So can you share your screen again? Someone is asking in the chat. Can you show again how to remake it?
Yep. So if you have an account and you're logged in, you'll see this little bubble here, and it'll have your name, and that's how you know you're logged in. And so then you just hit remake, and it will. I have too many Padlets, so it's not going to let me do it. But if you have less than 3, it will let you remake it, and that will be one of your 3 that you can use.
And I just wanted to add, there's 2 boxes you need to check. If you only check the first box, you're only going to get the format. If you want all the posts that are there, you want to also check the second box.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions in the chat?
I think there was one question, actually, I did notice. Someone asked, can you define LRNG?
I think that was posted a little bit before Kayla jumped in. So if there's still questions on that, we can definitely address them. Did Kayla get that answered maybe?
Yeah, so the letters LRNG, there isn't a definitive behind it. I've searched high and low. It is what that platform is just titled. It is what it is called. It is the foundational collaborative, if you will, who developed the platform. So there's, if you go to their site and look at the history, then you'll see who was all entailed in that collaborative, but the LRNG itself doesn't specifically stand for anything on its own.
Great. Thank you for answering that question. I think the person was happy with your response.
Good. Okay. Well, then last but not least, we want to introduce you to the Envision It curriculum. And Brenna, while you're describing that a little bit, I'm trying to reshare the PowerPoint.
Good morning, everyone. So for those of you that are not familiar with Envision It is a free curriculum that was developed by the Nysonger Center out of OSU. It is a career and career, college, whatever, readiness curriculum for students based on 21st century skills. So it covers 4 what they refer to as key competency areas: transition planning, career readiness, information technology literacy, reading and writing or traditional ELA literacy, and then financial literacy. And so there are 12 modules that can be explored across grades 6 through 12. These are evidence-based lessons. They are standards aligned, meaning they're aligned to our academic and professional standards in the state of Ohio. It's available through Schoology, and there's a special code to be able to access that, or the entire suite of curriculum, all activities, all teacher resources, everything you could possibly need to implement the curriculum is also available on Google Drive and can be implemented within your own Google Classroom. It really is a comprehensive curriculum that I know a lot of people, very similar to our Padlet, a lot of people take the Envision It curriculum and then kind of beef it up or add their own external activities. It is meant to be or is best delivered hybrid, meaning that it wouldn't be necessarily an entirely self-paced curriculum that students would just go through on their own, but that there would be some level of teacher interaction and additional activity outside of the modules themselves. Oh, I know there was one other thing I wanted to say. I know the Nice Hunger Center is happy to answer any questions and also troubleshoot anything technology-wise. They've been really great about making this curriculum accessible. So it was designed to meet the needs of both students with disabilities and students without disabilities. So it is very accessible, and they have a lot of tips and tools for kind of helping students pace depending on where they are and what their transition needs might be, kind of looking again, starting in 6th grade and that awareness level, and then moving all the way up through preparation in 12th grade. So if you have any questions, do please feel free to reach out. I'll put the link to their main page on the Nice Hunger Center here. You can see as well, they have the flyer that kind of generally covers some of the evidence-based practice, alignment to legislated expectations in IDEA, Perkins, all kinds of stuff.
If you've gotten a chance to download the presentation, the link is also on the logo here on the slide.
And Terrell mentioned, yeah, OSU offers free support to help districts develop a course of study, since the curriculum that they've developed is really extensive, and absolutely reach out to them. They are very helpful and very supportive with this curriculum.
Great. So just to reiterate, again, we are working to use the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal professional skills to be the foundation of professional and employability skills that we help high school students understand and be able to demonstrate proficiency of. And so especially in these remote times, we wanted to make sure that you all had tools to build from as you're thinking about how to connect with students either in a hybrid setting or in limited in-person time, or in a fully remote setting. And hopefully you'll find either the LRNG, the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal Padlet, or the Envision It curriculum to be helpful in the way that you craft the ways that students interact with these employment or professional skills in the future. So does anyone have any questions about those 3 particular tools before we move in to interviewing practice and tips for interviewing? Okay. So the next section here is getting the job. So we want to talk with you a little bit about how to help students prepare for a job interview, especially in these times. So we know that sometimes a student might have to do a virtual job interview, or it may be unclear exactly, where they need to go for their interview or what it is they're going to be doing in an interview. So we want to introduce you to an online tool that may help students prepare for interviews through the Ohio Means Jobs platform. But then we also want to turn it over to Yusuf to give you some tips, some practical tips on how to help prepare students for interviews. And it looks like there's a question: are there resources to help students with significant disabilities access the OMJ seal? So the resources that we introduced you today can cut across any students with disabilities or traditional students who are studying, and then you can adapt that curriculum. Envision It was built with students with disabilities in mind, so Envision It might be a good place to start. Brenna, did you have any other thoughts in particular to that question?
No, and I think I definitely understand coming when we're thinking about students with more significant disabilities that may need modified activities or things like that. I definitely think it's something that the Nice-Songer Center would be an excellent resource. Again, they developed the curriculum to be accessible to everybody, but I think they would have a lot of insight as to how to maybe adjust some of the activities to be more at that modified level that some students might need. That's what comes to mind at the moment as far as that. I think mostly it's what would be beneficial is to be able to work with an employer or business mentor to kind of define based on the student's skill set and where some of the goals that you've set for the student, where they feel like the demonstration might be able to occur. So when we talk about leadership, looking at activities that the student might be partaking in a workplace environment or in a community environment, how can we give them an opportunity to demonstrate leadership or build that in? So more so I would think about it would kind of take some extra planning at the beginning to be more intentional about defining the opportunity for that experience, if it's something that the student might need to continue building skills towards. And of course, a lot of our students need to continue building skills towards some of these standards.
So working individually one-on-one with an employer to provide those opportunities is a great thought. It's great. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Okay, so Kayla's going to kind of walk us through some of the practice interview tools on the Ohio Means Jobs K-12 website. So Kayla, I'll be your clicker. Just tell me when to move forward.
Okay. Did the slide already update, or is my computer delayed?
Your computer might be delayed. It's
on.
I currently can't display content, and that was up for the presentation for Brenna as well. So I'm not sure if everybody's seeing what you guys are seeing.
I'm actually able to see the OMJ K-12 resource.
Okay. Good. Yeah. There must be something going on with mine then.
Okay, I'm still at interviewing practice and tips. Like,
does it say how to find practice interviews and tips?
Nope, but it's letting me navigate mine. So I'm not sure.
Linda said she sees the same thing as Amy, so maybe let's try this way. Is that any better, Kayla?
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
Yes, I can see now.
All right.
How it's different for each person.
Yeah. So for the Ohio Means Jobs K-12, what you're seeing here is for our 9th through 12th graders when they go into their backpack accounts. And I just wanted to show 2 ways that you can get to the practice interviews and tips. If you go to the Planet drop-down list, you'll see assessments and training, or you can see their that front page card deck. At the bottom of that, you'll see where it'll say practice, it'll say assessments and training as well. Or actually, I think it says practice interviews and tips. So in that bottom left-hand corner card, you'll see it there on their main landing page, or they can get to it from the Planet drop-down list. So if you want to go to the next slide. And so I just wanted to show you guys how the transition, one of the big things is we definitely want to make sure our students are actually logged into their backpack accounts before accessing the Practice and Interview Center so that all their activities being transferred back to their backpack. So from the K-12 platform, they would click on that. It's so tiny. The Practice Interview Center green button, and there's like at the top when they go to the Practice Interview Center, you'll see where it says Learn, Practice, and then My Videos. What you're seeing here is the Learn platform, so it's all of the access to all the sessions and training resources that they can go through to learn about the different facets of interviewing, 30 days on the job, and other things that's going to prepare them for the workforce. And that practice component gives them varying options to do those video practices. So they will go through different categories that you see there to explore different practice interview questions, gives them an opportunity to see themselves, record themselves answering them and reviewing them. So all the videos that they do go into their My Videos catalog, so they can go back and critique themselves. Their mentors and teachers can help critique, even if it's just the non-verbal components of their interviews, talking about body language and all of those other components. So it's a really, really good tool, especially when a lot of these things are happening in a virtual platform. So if we want to go to the next slide. I wanted to give an example of what one of these practice interviews look like. So they would go through, this one is for the, I can't read it, it's so tiny. But this is one of the examples of the module that a student would go through to, one, learn about interviewing, and then it'll give them quizzes and opportunities to record themselves responding to some of the interview questions that are provided throughout. So as they're learning, they're practicing even in those modules as well. So we can go to the next one. And I always want to just reiterate, when you have student-based account support needs, if it's changing a password or they can't remember their credentials to log in, you want to make sure that you're calling the 888 number and then clicking option 3. But you as an administrator, if you need support or general support for the K-12 or High Means Jobs K-12, you can email us as well. And that's all I have. Sorry.
It's great fun working from home, as you all can tell. Thank you for being patient with us. Okay, so just to kind of summarize, on the Ohio Means Jobs practice interview portal, students can film themselves and turn videos in responding to the various video prompts in the practice interview application. So there's a lot of really neat prompts and ways that you can engage students in practice interviews remotely and even in the classroom. So this could definitely be a project that they could do in the classroom as well. So thank you, Kayla. Any comments, thoughts, questions about the Ohio Means Jobs platform for interviewing practices?
Cassie, are those interviews then looked at by anybody, or do teachers have to be assigned to look at those?
Right, so teachers can then look at them, which is why it's so important for students to be logged into their backpack. That way you can assign the teacher to review the videos, and then the videos are stored in the student's account. So yes, the teacher reviews the videos.
And what about the security in that piece? You know, because parents, you know, I've been trying to get people in Preble County to feel as if this is something that parents can feel comfortable with, having their students, you know, develop the backpack and be out there. Is there any particular piece of information that I could use to share with parents about that and teachers?
I can say, in terms of just using the Ohio Means Jobs K-12 backpack, there are security components to assure the identity of the student is protected in terms of the data that they're providing in their backpack. There's also several red flag moment components to it. So if a student accidentally attempts to open up their resumes to business and industry, it will flag it and require them to answer several questions to kind of backtrack them out, especially because we know kids 18 and below, that's their protection security, is to keep them from doing that. So there's lines of protection there. As far as having those videos and that secure site for the practice interviews, I think that's something that we can probably get more detail on. That is a good question, because it's not one that I've had addressed yet or received yet, but I think it's a really good one to put out there, especially now with everything being virtual. So I will put that on myself to follow up with our Monster and OMJ team to get some more detail specifically around the video component of the practice interview center. So thank you for that.
Kayla, I appreciate that. And then probably one other thing, you know, we have a local portal that students can upload their resume to, and seniors and juniors, when asked to do that, sometimes don't do that with the honesty that they should, or with the care, and sometimes they take it as a game. So are there any algorithms or anything in place on Munster and Ohio Means Jobs to kind of see a resume that's less than desirable to be posted?
So the beauty in that is there's a grading system that a student can, it could be a requirement as they are developing their resumes. There's a grading system within the backpack where an algorithm basically reviews the content that they have in there, and then based off of an entry level, mid-level, and executive level type resumes, it will provide feedback and give them a grade A through F based on that criteria, and then give them quality feedback to revise, refresh, and make it acceptable or beyond. So there's some components in there to help support the teacher in kind of getting a quick glimpse on how much students are really putting into developing out their resume. So that can give them that quick moment to be like, okay, it says your resume is an F. We're clearly missing a lot of content here. Let's step back and think about what components you need. So hopefully that kind of helps give an opportunity to gauge where a student is in the resume development process.
And we could either sit down one-on-one to show you how exactly that works, or if there was a group of people that were interested in more resume grading tips, I'm sure Kayla would be willing to host like a little half-hour session to just show everybody how to do that. It's pretty quick and easy.
Yeah.
Does that help at all, Harold?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So one thing that we are pretty committed to doing, especially over this next school year, is, well, this coming school year that we're in the middle of, is highlighting some special features of Ohio Means Jobs that we know folks aren't using as much as some of the other tools. So for example, we know on a state level, the Career Interest Survey is the top used tool on Ohio Means Jobs K-12. But we know that there's a lot of other valuable tools that folks just may not know how to use or know even exists. So this is an example of one specific tool on Ohio Means Jobs K-12 we want to continue to promote the use of. I think I saw in the chat, there's someone that knows someone in a school district who is using the tool and find it helpful, and the students enjoy it. So thank you, Terrell, for sharing that. And then it says Melissa said she would be interested in a resume session if it was offered. So as we continue to build out this network, we can start kind of differentiating and offering different sessions for what folks might find of interest as it arises. So I'm going to ask if you all would do me a favor and in your survey feedback, when we send the survey out here at the end of our session, just write in there, what you would be interested in. There's a whole assessment section of Ohio Means Jobs that has practice ACT, practice SATs. It has practice career, specific career field tests. It has practice end of course tests. So there's all kinds of stuff even on an assessment and training center that might be useful too. Thank you, Ms. Kayla. Any other comments, thoughts, questions about using Ohio Means Jobs as an interview practice? All right. Well, at this time, we're going to turn it over to our special guest, Yusuf. And so, Yusuf, don't hesitate to tell me to slow down or speed up when clicking your slides, but we're going to go ahead and turn it over to you for some tips on getting and keeping a job from what you're seeing.
Yeah, thank you, Cassandra. Thank you for allowing me to share what I'm seeing in the industry. And really with this approach, my voice is coming from a best practice perspective from us as recruiters. And I really just hopefully can highlight the experience from both the interviewer and the interviewee. So as I'm going through this, and we can go to the next slide, please. What I really just want to do is highlight, first of all, this, it's all an ongoing learning experience, right? We in pediatrics certainly take that approach. and understanding that, hey, what we practice today in human resources wasn't always practiced previously, and it continues to evolve, right? And that's really where our piece comes in, is in regards to how it's evolving now to the virtual space, right? So a lot of what I may be speaking may be familiar to you from your previous professional experiences or from when you last got a job, but my goal is really just to kind of remind you of what's going on, as well as kind of highlight how we could be resources for our students. So with the next slide, I'm going to overview our what we consider the full recruiting process, right? So from a perspective of what that full cycle recruiting looks like, what we identify as employers is we start with the job description. And I'm going to use that also to help you understand how you can then build a resume or help students with their resume in regards to the job description. That job description is really going to entail some major components. The first is going to give you an overview of the position, where that job is, what's expected of the role, and how it contributes to the organization's overall goal. And then in the next portion of the job description, you're going to give out daily functions or essential functions of the position. Those are the daily action items or the major action items that are identified in the expectations of this position. Within that, we certainly encourage anyone to review a job description as you're developing a resume, particularly if it's a field that you're very familiar with. I recruit for nurses, right? So as I'm speaking to students that are pursuing nursing, I really encourage them to look at what job descriptions for nurses are. It gives you a lot of the verbiage that you can apply to your own resume. So when having these conversations with students, I certainly take that same approach. Even when I'm having conversations with our managers and developing those interview questions, right? That's the next step, preparing those questions. We're using that job description to also prepare those questions for our interviews, right? We want to key and hone in on those specific functions, those key knowledge, skills, and abilities that we want to essentially gather the candidate has in order to meet the daily functions of the position, right? So when having conversations with students, I certainly encourage that same approach. I would encourage you to help them best understand what the organization is looking for. And a lot of what we're looking for is going to be in those skills that we discussed earlier in this conversation in regards to the career readiness approach, right? And I'll certainly touch on that as I discuss maintaining and keeping a job. That's often where we see it in human resources come to head. In comparison to the interview, you're seeing the best of that person in that interview, right? So with that understanding, we really want to kind of best describe how we then take the approach to interview questions. So preparing individuals to ask those interview questions, but also preparing individuals to answer those questions. As I touched on, those questions are going to be centered around that job description. So anytime looking for a job, I always encourage individuals to best understand that job description and maybe even tweak your resume, tweak what that resume looks like or some of that verbiage. Also in this virtual space, we as recruiters, we search online for resumes and profiles. So we're doing keyword searches often. And so some of those keyword searches that are in our description can now be reflected in your resume that will allow us to use our electronic tools to find you easier, right? So it's all about how you can stand out to us. So next slide, please. And as you're standing out, I certainly want to discuss that resume, right? So what we as HR professionals pay attention to in the resume is how is this individual presenting themselves, from the tone to the choice of words, right? And particularly some of those attention to detail areas, right? So when you talk about those job readiness skills in regards to written communication, verbal communication, this is paramount for us because this is all we have as HR professionals, right? So when sharing this with students, I certainly encourage you to share that attention to detail is huge. Tense, right? A previous job, you want to ensure that they're using past tense, present job, current tense. And in regards to structure of that resume goes, it doesn't have to be a particular structure, but we certainly encourage you to advise students, particularly in what exactly we're looking at. We as recruiters have about 30 seconds to review a resume, and in that time, we're really taking our eyes to certain points of that resume. We want to know how we can get in touch with you. So encouraging students to have that updated information, ensuring that that updated information is not only appropriate, right? When we talk about some email accounts, we want to encourage that, hey, if you got a personal one, great, create a professional one. Use first name, last name. It makes a difference sometimes. In regards to also just when we are reaching out to you, the voicemails, ensuring that you have your voicemails cleared, right? These are certain small things that sometimes I think students don't have at the front of mind because they're still just now entering this space. Or even when we're looking at individuals that are new to employment space or re-entering the workforce, sometimes these are reminders that we share. So the information provided on a resume and also the format, right? We don't want to strain as recruiters, to strain our eyes, the small font, the difficulty when separating which one job ended from another. So make it easy on us, right? Any way in which you can make it easy on us as HR professionals, we're going to be able to allow a little bit more, I would say, grace as a recruiter, just because it's so time driven. Allow a little bit more grace to maybe take a second look, highlight some things and pass that on to the manager, right? So when we're talking to students, we want them to highlight things that they're doing outside of school. We certainly understand that work experience is going to be limited, so we are going to encourage them to touch on some of those extracurricular activities. So that kind of leads me to my next slide. What we're looking for, right? So what we as HR professionals, we want individuals to highlight achievements, right? And understanding that it doesn't always present itself in the academic realm or the professional realm. Sometimes it's working in the faith-based group, community-based group. Sometimes it's volunteering with parents in something that they're passionate about. But oftentimes that allows students to develop certain skills and to be in those professional spaces, to understand what professional etiquette is and what it looks like beyond just maybe what's listed on a piece of paper or something maybe that they didn't quite capture during class. So certainly want individuals to be able to understand that these are skills that we want you to highlight, right? So we want you to highlight ways in which you can contribute, even if it's beyond just what has been evaluated of you in school. So we certainly want to review education experience and also those recognized credentials. So as I hear the career readiness conversation and preparation with those key 14 skill sets, along with the readiness in regards to being drug-free, those are huge for us. As much as we want to employ that next flowing workforce, we want to also make sure that they're prepared and understand what those expectations are. And that also encourages them to be remain, I guess, proficient in these skills. So not only attaining and certifying that these individuals are familiar with it, but I love hearing how there's tools provided for you to evaluate these, right? So not only understanding what it means to perform, but then to evaluate it, because that's ultimately where we are as HR professionals. So understanding what we are finding on the resume doesn't always entail to what it looks like during that interview conversation or during performance. So next slide, please. Continuing on in what we are encouraging students not to do, right? What we would love not to see on resumes is that misrepresentation of yourself. So we all understand that this is a perfect time to highlight the great things that you've done. But a lot of times individuals who maybe don't have too much to add to a resume want to maybe embellish a little bit. And we highly discourage that for the simple fact that we as recruiters, we have to do our recourse. We have to investigate this information. We have to look through it, and for someone to present themselves well and then for it to not necessarily pan out. And it doesn't happen often, but a lot of times with younger professionals, they may represent maybe a certification. They started it but didn't complete it. Maybe they did some coursework and don't correctly represent the completion date of that, or if they did complete it. So certain things like that, where we are really just encouraging young professionals to understand what that looks like in regards to properly representing yourself and misrepresenting yourself. And as we touch on properly representing yourself, we start certainly encouraging students at an early stages, high school particularly, to get involved on LinkedIn. It is a social network, but a little bit different than the social media where we see a lot of individuals doing their self-expression. This allows you to do some professional expression, and it allows us as recruiters to find you a little bit quicker, but it also allows us to see a little bit more you are. So you're a high school student and you're in National Honor Society and you run track and you're doing various things where we see on maybe your resume, but we also see it in action. We also see your friends commenting, highlighting great things you've done. It only speaks to you from our perspective. So we just want to, reiterate in regards to when we're having conversations with students and what professionals in HR are looking for, we want to continue just to be mindful of, hey, there's also some things that we would discourage you, or some pitfalls that we've seen others take. And it's really just a reminder oftentimes to students. Next slide, please. So I want to touch on behavior-based interviewing. That is certainly a common practice in the industry, particularly in human resources, where we take on that approach that previous and past behaviors predict future behaviors, right? But where we take this approach is certainly understanding that individuals have the opportunity to grow, develop, and improve on previous behaviors. What we use is that behavior-based interviewing to capture those moments. So what we ask students as well as professionals to do, depending on whether we're recruiting for an internship, externship, or a permanent job placement, is in those questions, we're going to ask for those specific scenarios where they gave examples of behaviors, right? And so we're putting on those emphasis on what a person has done in the past to kind of predict what a person will do. And in those moments, we often will get some unlocks as a recruiter to say, hey, maybe they did this in the past, but oftentimes when someone is sharing a mistake they made in the past, they'll also discuss how they rectified that mistake or how they corrected it or how they took some accountability for it. So we include some of those open-ended endings to questions. How did you learn from it? What steps did you take to improve from this mistake? Or various instances where maybe customer service was asked of you and how did you exceed expectations? So really with that is just a effort we take just to continue to best identify those key skills, those strengths, those abilities in individuals. So when having conversations with students, I certainly would encourage the practicing of behavior-based interview questions, encouraging them to identify examples to support their responses to certain questions, even if it's not presented as a behavior-based question. Those previous scenarios certainly will add some strength to the response and give particular examples of how an individual was successful, even if it is a class project, even if it is something maybe they did with their youth group on the church on a Sunday. Those all can still be applicable experiences. Next slide, please. So with this slide, I just want to continue the conversation of remaining mindful and remaining equity-minded in regards to the interview questions as well as the selection process, right? And I know talking to educators, a lot of you are familiar with the equity expectations and how we treat individuals. But from a legal precedence, we as recruiters certainly have to be mindful of these various acts as it pertains to processes and our steps to engage with candidates, right? Whether it is individuals with limited abilities, individuals who maybe have re-entered the workforce, right? And we talk about how virtual looks, right? We certainly want to be mindful of even things such as age discrimination and how we're preparing candidates for those virtual conversations, right? So that goes on both ends of the spectrum, early in employment, but also the later stages of employment. So even in our conversations with students, we'll have those mock interviews. And then when we're initially kind of getting things set up in the spring of 2020, this fall is looking a little bit more adaptable in comparison. But initially, a lot of people were expecting in person as we started transitioning to virtual, right? And having those conversations with students that are also preparing for maybe other expectations and getting them prepared for a virtual interview. That's essentially where we continue to find areas where we want to be mindful of legal precedents because it does transfer over. The virtual and our perspective as human resources and well as recruitment, virtual is here to stay. As much as we want to get back to in-person, virtual is the new norm. So we have multiple platforms where we're going to do video interviewing, but also we want to be sure when you're taking your notes, so this is particularly for individuals who are involved in the interviews. We want to ensure consistent questions, but also be mindful of the notes you're taking, right? We and Human Resources, if we're ever asked to submit those notes, we certainly are responsible for what we've written. So just be mindful of the equity approach in these conversations is where I was taking this conversation. The next slide, please. All right, so as we talk about preparing students remotely for work, right, we touched on this interview process, right, and how we already have seen some of those resources in the student's backpack. And I love to see that in regards to that mock interview. That is so huge for us. When I'm on campuses with college students, I do mock interviews. When I'm having conversations for various internships, we're doing mock interviews. I'm preparing these individuals and giving them that real-time feedback, because oftentimes we as recruiters, we're too busy to give you that real-time feedback. I have multiple interviews in one day. I'm going to have this conversation with you, evaluate you, move on to the next. But helping students best understand how they can better be prepared for it certainly has proven to be a model of success for us as we're looking at our various internship opportunities. Job searching and utilizing job boards. We want to continue to just emphasize that that is also a space that continues to grow. Just like I mentioned in LinkedIn, there's also various other sources that you can find information about jobs. You can find information about individuals. Recruiters, we're using those same job boards. So we certainly encourage, as soon as you get a resume, put it out there. Even if it's a resume you're working on, talk to the students about just their comfort of putting themselves out for consideration. And as you continue to have those conversations in regards to those skills, right, those career readiness skills, it's also an importance to discussing how maintaining those skills throughout the ups and downs of life are very imperative, in my opinion. From a HR perspective, oftentimes we're not seeing individuals performing poorly when things are going great for them at home. They're starting to perform poorly when we're seeing, challenges. Maybe it's the babysitter, maybe it's family challenges. We talk about emotional health, right? Social and emotional health is important in teamwork, right? Because oftentimes individuals maybe not contributing to those team expectations and not meeting those expectations, even though they know their job, even though they know the work that they're doing. There are additional components for evaluation and professional dress, right? Unfortunately, it is certainly a time where we're not going to be seeing each other as much as we would like. However, be mindful of that even from the waist up, right? It's easier this way when we're virtual, but we certainly want to emphasize this. I've had interviews today, in fact, where I'm speaking with a professional, certainly beyond the ages of a 9th to 12th grader, where they're not professionally dressed. And although we're in a virtual conversation, I find it somewhat challenging to move this person forward because they aren't professionally dressed. They're not presenting themselves with the expectations that we lay out before even telling you what the job entails. So that can certainly not only limit individuals' ability to get a job, but also limit opportunities when in a job. If this individual may be evaluated for the next step in comparison to someone else. As much as we would like to think that attire doesn't matter, it certainly presents itself to their overall professional presentation. And how does that reflect within the organization? If one person is presenting themselves with equal skills, but a little bit more polished, perhaps the organization would see that someone as better fit for public speaking position. So it all can play into each other. As much as we would like to think that something as small as professional attire doesn't limit or prevent someone from getting a job, I think we can all attest in one way or another that it has, or at least will impact how you're being evaluated as a professional. Next slide, please. So really, I kind of wanted to wrap this up with just giving you some insight, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity just to share what we generally see in regards to expectations and helping students be prepared for that interview process. I want to review that full cycle interview process just to highlight again that that job description is going to be a key resource for so many different things in regards to that overall interview process, all the way up until the point where the selection is being made, right? So we encourage individuals who are managers on our teams to be mindful of that, to structure their questions around that. but also when having conversations with students or individuals who are applying for the jobs, we certainly want to educate them as into ways in which they best can highlight those skills using the job description. So insights from past interviews, I would love to take time just to share all that I've seen. One thing I would certainly say is for younger those resumes, particularly the resumes, I've seen a lot. I've seen resumes where individuals are just copying, pasting template information and forgetting to add their own name, forgetting to add their own email, right? Or what you'll see is the same verbiage from the template information right in their resume, and then they're just writing their information, kind of filling in the blanks. It's noticeable, right? So from that perspective, I certainly love the fact that students now have these resources where you can be evaluated on the resume you present. And I remember how it was in high school and thinking my resume wasn't as important, right? But one thing you want to continue to do is just that workforce readiness is going to continue to be presented in high school. We as recruiters, we're looking as far back as high school. We have programs such as the Explorers program with Nationwide Children's, where high school students can do job shadowing. We have volunteering opportunities for high school students where they can get in a professional space and start preparing for that, right? So I think when that's also how individuals will learn how to keep a job. It's not only understanding what those skills are written down, those expected interpersonal skills, but this demonstrating those, right? Demonstrating those interpersonal skills in a work setting, whether it's a volunteer setting, a student clinical setting, in regards to performance, helping individuals understand that their performance will be constantly evaluated is the best way I can present it. Not only in those times in which your boss is evaluating, but when you're working with internal partners, when you're supporting fellow coworkers, all of that also is shared 9 times out of 10 from that individual to your employer in one way or another, or your manager, I apologize. So helping individuals just be mindful that you're going to be constantly evaluated is always an approach I take. In regards to keeping a job, I know it was discussed as those professional skills, right? In industry, sometimes we still refer to them as those soft skills, but those are so important in regards to particularly teamwork, in regards to emotional intelligence and understanding how to, we use learning agility, but it's also just adaptability to new information, new expectations, right? And again, managing all of that while life is changing, particularly with younger professionals, that's when we're seeing a lot of those changes, whether it's having a child, getting married, changes with education, changes with health, right? Those are all real life instances and concerns. However, it's really just remaining agile in those challenges is the best advice I would ask you to share with students as they're preparing for the workforce. And take advantage of those opportunities offered by employers, right? Whether it's the scholarships, whether it's the tuition reimbursement, whether it's credentialing or certification opportunities. A lot of organizations, particularly in healthcare, like Nationwide Children's, in which I work, are going to have not only this, but they're also going to have community-based programs, right? And taking advantage of that, even if it is an opportunity maybe to volunteer, it can certainly expose you to other members within the organization that could provide perhaps a different direction in your career trajectory. So I certainly encourage individuals to take advantage of all opportunities offered by employers, just to better prepare yourself, right? And that's really where my advice often is going, in that advancement space, right? Advancing your careers, advancing your skills, advancing your education. And that's really where I see individuals who have taken advantage of those opportunities presented by their employer to take those next steps, identifying what those next steps are. Sometimes it's just knowing what jobs are offered. And sometimes if you are able to put yourself in those spaces, you'll be able to see a lot of what's available beyond what's posted on the website. So I certainly want to remain mindful of everyone's time. But I did want to really just kind of review a few of what I'm seeing in regards to key points, but as well as touch points where, if there is any helpful direction in which I can partner with you, Cassandra, Michelle, moving forward, I'm certainly happy to do so. But again, thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yusuf, I would think that there's probably a lot of places in which we can start to build out some resources for our leaders here on the call, but then also to use with their students. So we really appreciate this kind of first step in partnership with you in developing, students to be ready to get and keep a job for sure. Does anyone have particular questions they'd like to ask Yusuf while we have him here?
There's one question. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't have a question, but I wanted to thank you. And if ever given the opportunity, it would be awesome, Cassandra, or one of you, if you could tape that portion so our kids could hear it directly from a professional, because I think sometimes that's the gap. The teacher has talked and talked and talked and talked, but until it comes from the guy who's, signing the paycheck,
Yeah.
it's not as relevant. So that would be a great thing to add to the Ohio Means Job System, is some HR professionals who can share those quick tips and tricks about what they're seeing and pieces that we could utilize in the classroom or even in the virtual classroom.
That's a great suggestion. So this session is being recorded. So what we might be able to do is post this whole session for an admin or a leader who's working on this work in the district, but then we could probably, Yusuf, with your permission, snip that one section or ask Yusuf to kind of do a kid-friendly version for posting. But Tracy, I'm also wondering, especially for our network of folks that are continuing to come every time, if it would make sense to plan around your all's schedules to do an in-person live session with Yusuf and maybe some others for your students to tune into, so that they could just ask the questions in a virtual setting just like this. And Yusuf, I don't want to commit you to something, but you did just say any way you could help.
Indeed.
So Tracy and team, I don't, folks on the call, I don't know if, think about it, and if that would be of use to you to have a live session for your students to engage with HR professionals who are doing hiring. Drop that into the survey that we put in the chat. So again, we want to know how we did today and what you want to see in the future for these. And if a student-facing HR virtual panel would be something that you'd be interested in, please let us know. Thank you for that, Tracy. And it looks like Terrell has their hand up.
I have a quick question for Yusuf. Thank you so much. This is great information. I'm thinking about resume format. You touched on that, and I understand the details. And I've actually seen several universities teaching their students to create resumes, for instance, in all lowercase letters with no punctuation at all. Lots of different things like that, and teaching them that is eye-catching and will make their resumes stand out. And I'm a little bit older, and I've been helping counsel, job seekers. That's probably not a great idea, but their universities are instructing them that. So from a, job developer person that you are, can you address that? Is that right, wrong?
I think that's a great question. And I often get this question while on universities' campuses about what we look for, right? And I can speak to me and Nationwide Children's. I've certainly worked for L Brands as well as who else? Madison County Hospital. So I've been in healthcare for about 6.5 years, recruited in retail for about 2 years, PNC Bank and L Brands prior. But really, from a general perspective, it's uniformity. Really, what we want to be able to see is someone who is using a uniform approach throughout, right? Because without that, it doesn't give me any type of intent that they were intentionally being like, for this example, using all lowercase. I have yet to see that, but I wouldn't be surprised. We certainly see pictures. We certainly see artistic backgrounds, working in various industries. I think you'll certainly see various approaches to resumes. When I was working in L Brands, we did see some more artistic approaches, but they were looking in creative design roles. They were looking in some of those artistic space professions. However, what I would advise is to go with the traditional approach in which they're asked to write papers in, right? That's what we as recruiters were trained to read. In regards to our educational backgrounds, I certainly think that it is a more fail-proof approach than maybe a trendy way of catching attention. I imagine if that is something that's being tested, it will present a little bit of challenges for us as recruiters. I only say that to say that that's not what we're seeing as of now in the industry. We're still seeing that traditional approach. And then if I could touch on format quickly, really what I generally, as a recruiter, what I'm looking for is that information where I can contact you. So generally, we'll see that up top, your education experience, either right after or at the very end. In regards to the core of what you're presenting is going to be in that middle, that body, right? Whether it's the years of experience at each employer, the years or roles of experience in different roles with one employer, or if it's your educational background and the involvement you've had while completing some extracurricular activities while in school. Really, I and certainly encourage individuals to take an approach where it's easy to follow. I think that's a long-winded way of saying all of that. If it's easy for us to follow, we'll find what we need as recruiters, but the more challenging it is, the less likely we're going to spend more time on it.
Thank you.
Well, let's further think about this idea of creating a way or an interface for students to interact with some HR professionals. That's really the type of support that we want to be providing all of you out in the field, especially in this virtual setting. It actually allows for us to do that much easier. So, if there's something the state can do in way of organizing professionals for your students to interact with, that's absolutely what we want to be doing. So please let us know that in the feedback form, which is posted in the chat. Yusuf, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise here today. We really hope that each of you had something to take away that you might be able to apply in thinking through your support of career readiness, hopefully the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal, and employment in your students' lives. So we appreciate that very much. So please, again, tell us how we did on the survey feedback. We look forward to reading those, and we will see you all back here on December 14th. Please feel free to bring a friend. So we would love to see this Career Readiness Leaders Network grow and build. And we can only do that with your expertise. So thank you all so much. We will post this recorded session onto that same webpage where you can find today's presentation as well. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you after Thanksgiving. So hopefully you have a great Turkey Day with your family. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So how are we sitting in those seats there, Michelle? Look at us. Do you see that? Oh, you just left. I'm the only one sitting in the seat. That is cool. I don't know who that is. Julie Brunner.
Hi, Amy. It's Martha from Cuyahoga Valley Career Center.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm just trying to get out. I'm not usually on Microsoft Teams. So.
I see somebody has like an auditorium seat, and I'm sitting in it, and I was getting ready to leave, and I'm like, how am I sitting in someone's like icon?
That's cool. I don't see that. So
that's neat. It looks like an auditorium, and Michelle Washington was just on, and she was sitting in a different seat, so I just thought that was neat.
Yeah, I just feel like your screen, and I saw Michelle's too, like your full screen. So
Julie Brunner is up there, but I don't know who's doing this. This is don't know. Interesting though.
That was a good meeting. Thanks for it.
Sure. We'll be meeting on the 11th, and we're going to do some follow-up discussion on this. I only saw 3 of us on from our area, so I'm going to give them some of the repeated links, but also add to some of that information through the regional meeting with like the mock interviewing, because I have some evaluations and things I'd like to share.
Okay. That's good. So
all right.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good.
That's the 11th.
Okay, I'll be on.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.